for us, technology adoption has been huge. And the ways that we see that technology adoption coming, not just from our inputs, so, having better data around water usage and precision inputs into our product lines, but also straight through to harvesting and the labor components, is that we don't necessarily see that automation completely removing the physical human components, especially around things like quality control. Sensors are amazing, but eyes on is always going to give you the best option. But we see that as helping to augment the more difficult or harder aspects of those physical roles. So we're seeing the types of work changing into maybe more appealing work. And we're seeing those aspects that maybe those parents are a little bit concerned about when they say, don't go into agriculture, become a lawyer, even though law has its own perception issues. I think those are some of the worries that a parent has, right? We know physical labor is hard on our bodies. And when we look at the ways that we can augment that, especially in a greenhouse context, we really are providing more exciting career paths that are less physically demanding. And I think that's an important thing to be realizing and communicating about the sector. It always breaks my heart when people see, maybe ag as a starting point to get to somewhere else, especially if they're bringing that science background. Like you said, the rigor of being able, Tania had shared the rigor of being able to apply those, critically analytical thinking skills, the science framework for, hypothesis testing. We need those skill sets in agriculture. We're seeing dramatic changes and new challenges and incredibly complex challenges that, if we have the right skill sets that see themselves as having a full career in agriculture and see those stepping stones, not just the entry level position, but where do I go from entry level to next step? How do I gain more responsibility? Who am I having those conversations with on the management team? I think we've done really well as a culture at Slaman's Greenhouses to really have an open door policy to really encourage ideas to be, brought up to management. It's very much a repetitive crop cycle for us. The responsibilities of stewarding that little plant from cutting to saleable cut flower is very standardized. But there's lots of room for innovation within that path. And then there's lots of room for creating appropriate career paths that, if we're communicating them right, are appealing. And then to Dusty's point, Burford doesn't have a Starbucks yet, but we do have lots of awesome local restaurants. And I think if we can start making those connections, and it's a role that owner-operators haven't necessarily played before, but it's one that in other sectors they have, which is helping to create those networks and those youth opportunities and those lifestyle touch points outside of the workplace. I think it's a sensitive conversation to have, but I think if there's an interest in our employees of having some support for making those decisions outside of the workplace, then we have to be ready to step up as owner and operators and to maybe go into those slightly uncomfortable places now that in the future we might see as very regular spaces where we have influence and important aspects to the conversation that we can bring. So I think more conversations like this.
Yeah, I think honestly, by working with people like Tania and Niki and other private companies, as well as opportunities for growth, both of company, for economics, for diversity of products, but also personnel, there's a lot of potential there by retaining, but also keeping people excited. In the last 5 years, we've developed 3 different types of plants for different timings because of a spur of trying to develop one plant. And so I think that's exciting, is that, okay, now, before it was tough to try to get one person, one grower, one technician, but now, okay, and now this person now has a team of 4, right? Because now they're looking after, they're researching, they're looking into that. That's been interesting to see, okay, what is Vineland looking at? What does the industry need? What is being, like Greta, what are you writing about? You know what I mean? Like, and so where does that selfishly, what can we do to obviously make more money, hire more people, and develop these needs that our industry is looking for? There's so many online courses in the winter time that maybe like we're probably operating 10 months of the year. So there are 2 months that it's, you're not maybe on site, but for understanding lighting, understanding nutrition better, that I think now that stuff is already understood by the scholars, we can now get that information disseminated now to our technicians, which offers opportunity. But it starts with, unfortunately, the owner operator letting go of that little bit of trust, letting go of that, okay, no, like these people want to be here, they want to be at my company, and they might not work at the speed that you do, but you probably don't work the speed that you think you do either, because you're doing 100 things at once.
I can tell you that at KPU, we work really hard in recruiting the next generation. We're very heavily involved with, like we start young, we'll bring elementary schools onto the campus and, get them out there doing some horticulture related activity, planting some plants or some vegetables, and, teaching them a little bit about what horticulture is about. We do a lot of career fairs with the high school students as well, and get them coming to tour on campus so that they can learn a little bit about what horticulture is. And then we do our, regular information sessions where people who are interested in going back to school, but they don't know what they want to do. And so we do one very specific to horticulture. So those all work well. I think, there's a couple of things, and I think Stephanie touched on one of them, is that the students that are coming through the systems now, and I think moving forward, sustainability, having a strong awareness of your environmental impact, those things are really important to the next generation coming through. I see students, disdain for still a relatively high use of plastics in our industry. I see them wanting to work at a place that adopts IPM, right? And that it isn't just simply on a sort of chemical program. Like, that's not what they're interested in. They have values that they want this, career that they're going to take on, that it feels aligned to them. And the other thing, and certainly for me personally, when I was a student and just starting out in the field in my career, after I'd finished my horticulture diploma, the most important thing that I felt that really solidified my place was having really strong mentors early on. And I had actually 3 different mentors in probably the first 5 or 6 years, and working very closely with them and gaining so many skills. Like you learn so much in horticulture when you go through our program, but we're giving you snippets of all these different crops we're teaching you about. So I started to specialize into one crop, and that having that mentor felt that I was being invested in. They were investing in my future, and in turn, I appreciated that, and I knew that I had to invest, my effort into the company. And I think that would help to retain those who, maybe are interested in horticulture, but to keep them there, because sometimes the retention rate can be a little bit lower. The other thing is, using technology. Students are also very interested in that when it doesn't look like, the old hand plows out sort of thing. They want to see some more of the automation That's another one that sort of stands out to me. And yeah, I just think we need to keep putting the message out there, the positive messages out there, start them young, like I said, and hopefully build, multiple generations. I think, having people as well that are passionate about horticulture and that's, being shown is really important as well. Students see, oh, okay, it is actually a really exciting field. Like, look at these people, they just love what they do.
One thing that I would say in the last 5 years that we have seen is a couple different things. We've had an increase in the number of international students that have been coming through Kwantlen Polytechnic University. And so they bring a really interesting background because a lot of them come from agriculture backgrounds. So they bring a certain skill set already that maybe some of the students who didn't have any experience in horticulture or agriculture, which is really nice. And it does help to add diversity to the group of students. And it helps us to sort of look at things from different angles, which I really, really love. The other thing that's been interesting is with, cannabis becoming legalized, we've had a lot of students very interested in going into that field as a career choice. And while we don't teach anything cannabis related in terms of our programs at the moment, we do explain to them that there's relatability among crops. And so we've seen students who still go through the education and still find a solid place in different cannabis operations after they've graduated. And what we try to do for students is we may not have those specific, we have many technologies at the school. We may not have some of the higher tech automation, but we make sure that students get out into these different operations that can show a number of different facilities throughout their schooling so that they can at least get a taste of what that looks like. Highlighting that there's growth, potential for growth in a company. And I think when I think back to applying for my summer work experience, I had multiple offers and I didn't pick the one that offered the most money. I actually picked the one where I saw that there was the greatest potential for me to move up and the one that I felt that I would get the best training from. And I think that was a smart choice from my end, because when I came back from my summer work experience, like I had a fantastic, minus the hours, I had a fantastic group of people that I worked with. I learned so much, and other students who maybe hadn't been so selective, they sort of picked the first one, or they picked the one that was an extra $1 or $2 an hour. They didn't necessarily have the same kind of experiences. So yeah, and I tell students, if you try one out and it's not working, there's always others. Like, don't give up and just think, oh, this is the way it all is,
But the student has changed. So what I have seen in the past 7 to 10 years, we see a lot of kids that are just drawn to food security, sustainable practices, homesteading. I put that in quotes because it is truly something that is very idealistic. They read about it, they watch the Little Big Farm and watch people lose money and lose money and lose money and lose money. And then, finally, 15 years later, they can say that they've got a good situation. We're very general now. Students take a smattering of many different courses. They're not pigeonholed into saying, I want to do all landscaping or all production courses. Again, that is the new student that is making the demand that I want to take. I just started another brand new class. I started teaching floristry again, because we used to have a 1-year certificate that was in that stream. They blew it up 15 years ago because numbers were starting to dwindle, but industry wouldn't support it. We do basics. We still do water, soil, how do we feed, all of the basic parts of growing plants and putting plants into the landscape. And so it's a really good foundation. And the more that we could work with industry to come up with those micro-credentials on top of that, not instead of that, but on top of that, that could be bite-size 2-hour kinds of things, this laddered with this, when this and this, and then you get a certificate of something. When I'm not in class during the growing season, it's really important for me that I'm out with the growers. It's not listed anywhere that it's part of my job. I just truly believe that if I want to be the best in introducing stuff to the students, that we keep up to date with what's going on out in the field.
I'm really encouraged to hear what Kim says about, the students increasing. I think that's a really good sign, particularly when we know they're all growing up in cities. So this idea of, transplants or crossover people from other sectors, we think a lot about crossover disciplines in, the sciences and technical field we're in, but also crossover industries. And I think, agriculture needs to attract people not just who grew up on a farm or who did an ag science degree or went through a horticulture program, but we want the people in computer science and food and nutrition and all kinds of other things. And so, it makes me think about those armed services ads, to come join the Navy and the military, those really glossy ads with the music and all these images. I think agriculture needs something like that, right? Spark the interest of people who grew up in the city and who find themselves in an engineering program or, food and nutrition or wherever else, because the sector is so broad and diverse. It's not just about sitting on a tractor in the middle of nowhere. There really is so many different types of jobs and so much need for people of all these kind of backgrounds and disciplines. So I think that's where the opportunity is, in tapping into that broad-based skill set and the broader public mindset, being aware of what agriculture even is these days. It's technologically advanced, it's interesting, it's dynamic, it's recession-proof, and there's economic growth and all of these things that young people should find attractive, but I think they really just are unaware. They haven't thought about it, So I think what we need to do first is kind of a PR campaign, one of those glossy join the armed forces type ads.
One of the things that OGVG has done, we actually have a 360 VR experience that we did. We put it together. They've got VR headsets. We've had everybody from little kids all the way up to seniors use these things. And it's first off, it's pretty cool watching people look around the greenhouse and see what happens. But the whole point of that was to showcase what happens in a farm. As someone who really believes in biosecurity, I don't want the public heading onto farms. I don't want them bringing whatever they got it from their home garden into our production facilities. So I think it's really hard to get people excited about something that you don't really want them to go to when they're excited about, right? You don't want anybody to just walk on your farm. We're out there talking to universities and the research institutes and other folks to really do that outreach. Champion growers are very helpful, but I don't think it's important that every grower goes out and does their own thing. I think working collectively is really important, and getting people who teach agriculture, at least locally, people who are teaching some of the stuff around agriculture, getting them into modern greenhouses as well. The greenhouse environment has changed a lot in the last 10 or 15 years. I'm assuming that's not just in greenhouse, but in pretty much everything else in horticulture too, from what I've heard. So it's changing quick. And I think making sure that those educating the next generation of growers and the next generation of people have regular access to be inside production, right? And see all that stuff that's changing and happening regularly too. But technology is something that needs to be incorporated. We can't make disruptive change incrementally. And we need to really prepare the people who are going to be implementing that change, and we need to support them and help them do it. It's not good enough to go, here's some technology. Good luck, everybody. We'll check up with you next year for your annual training. I think it's going to really need everybody kind of working together on this one, and people building those teams where, you know, they include people from the public, from public sectors or public positions perhaps, as well as, you know, research institutes and growers and a little bit of everybody to show it can be done. I'm a big fan of champions and showing how if you can make it work for a couple of people, we can expand those models and get them to work for everybody, right? Or at least everybody that's interested. I'd also like to say that the micro-credentialing, I think that's a new awesome word that's being used everywhere, but I think there's a really good opportunity to bring those right to the farm, like right to a greenhouse lunchroom. Why can't we teach micro courses or short courses, especially the ones that are a couple hours at a time, to teach them real active skills while you're in the greenhouse where you're going to be using those skills this afternoon, right? So I think there's some opportunities to improve the education of the workers who are already there. However, it's a different model of education, and I think we're all trying to find our way through that. But certainly within our sector, I would say a lot of people, they say get to be an IPM supervisor. And then they're like, okay, now what? And there's so many jobs outside of production that they could go to, but a lot of times people just see those production jobs of where they're at. Whereas we have tons of supplier companies. We have, you know, there's lots of research. They could totally go to Vineland if they work there, if they want to be in research, or at Harrow if they want to be in research. There's, you know, there's lots of opportunity out there, but I think we also need to show what you can do, right? Because another comment we get is, well, what do you do other than picking and packing, right? So we need to show that it's a small city that works in a greenhouse, right? We have all of the jobs that every single, you know, that a Fortune 500 company has. We have all the different departments, you know, marketing and HR and sales and, you know, all the different production stuff, but we need to kind of make ourselves attractive, right? Like we really do need to show ourselves as for the future. You know, the roaring 20s are coming for ag, and, you know, it's an exciting time to be part of it.